Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about Cursor, one of the fastest growing AI companies on the planet. We're going to break down their playbook for navigating the absolute chaos of hypergrowth, a speed that's kind of redefining what it even means to build a company right now.
The growth has been so insane that it's stunning even seasoned venture capitalists, the folks who are supposed to have seen it all. We're talking about a speed that is just completely off the charts.
So that's the big question, right? How did a small team build a product that suddenly feels like it's everywhere, almost overnight? What does it actually take to keep the lights on when your user base is exploding and your tech is straining at the seams?
Well, their journey was anything but a straight line. It was more like a series of escalating, almost impossible challenges. And for each one, they came up with a clever and often pretty unconventional solution. They basically wrote a manual for managing mayhem as they went. So let's open it up and dive right in.
You know how almost every great startup story has that big pivot moment? Well, Cursor is no exception. Before it was this game-changing tool for coders, it was actually an idea for a totally different field. And that led them straight into their first major hurdle, just finding the right problem to solve. So their first idea was to build an AI tool for mechanical engineers who use CAD software. The only problem? They weren't mechanical engineers. They called it the blind man and the elephant problem. They just couldn't get a feel for the whole picture. But for programming, well, that was different. The existing AI models, the LLMs, were already fantastic with code. So that switch instantly solved their biggest issue. They were finally building a tool for themselves. And that whole experience really left a mark. Wasting all those months on the wrong idea gave them what the co-founder, Michael Truell, calls a kind of PTSD. And here's the first big takeaway for us. That pain, that frustration, it became the rocket fuel for the incredible speed and hyperfocus that would define their entire strategy from that point on. Okay, so they finally found their focus, but now they've got a whole new problem. The market is absolutely jammed with other startup, and oh yeah, it's dominated by Microsoft's GitHub Copilot. Their solution? Radical simplicity and just relentless speed. So instead of building a whole new code editor from scratch, they forked VS Code. That just means they took its public, open-source code and built their AI features right on top of it. This was a genius move because it let them focus on the one thing that mattered, making a better user experience. They got a product out to people in record time, and they even used their own monthly investor updates to force themselves to keep shipping new stuff. Now this, right here, is their big contrarian bet. Everybody thought developers are way too attached to their tools and would never switch. But the Cursor founders knew that was just plain wrong. How? Because they had already switched themselves for a better AI experience. The lesson here is pretty clear. Know your users so deeply that you can confidently bet against what everyone else thinks is true.
Okay, so with all this crazy growth came a problem that, let's be honest, most founders would kill for. Their success was so massive, it literally started breaking the internet infrastructure they were running on. The scale was just getting unmanageable.
And this little story perfectly captures the kind of scale we're talking about. Their tool became so essential to people's work that when it went down for even a little bit, it wasn't just some error message on a screen. A user literally hunted down their office and stuck an iPad to the window with the message, "Cursor's down." That's how much people needed it. So their Kubernetes cluster, that's the system that juggles all their apps in the cloud, and their database were basically screaming for help. They couldn't keep up. So they got smart and tackled this with a two-part strategy. Some really sophisticated engineering, and some very savvy relationship building. But, scaling your tech is one thing. You also have to scale your team. And that brings us to their next big challenge.
To handle this level of pure mayhem, you need an absolutely elite team, and you need them like yesterday. So their approach to hiring was just as intense and unconventional as their product strategy.
Now, this is not your typical coding interview, not even close. It's a full-on, real-world simulation. They're not just testing if you can write code. They're trying to see if you can think like a founder. They're looking for this quality they call agentic. It's an intense filter, for sure, but it's a huge takeaway for anyone hiring in a fast-moving space. Test for ownership, not just raw skill.
And they truly believe in doing whatever it takes to get the best people in the door. And I mean whatever it takes. We're talking about tactics that sound extreme, like flying across the world to meet someone who already said no, or even buying entire companies just to hire an amazing team. And this all brings us to the final and maybe the most difficult challenge of them all. When you're in a field that moves at the speed of AI, how do you avoid disrupting yourself right out of existence?
A candidate actually asked them this once, and it's this deep, philosophical question that gets right to the heart of their big challenge. Think about it. If you're building the very tool that could one day automate your own job, what happens next? It really forced the team to look in the mirror and confront their own potential future.
Well, the way CEO Michael Truell sees it, we're still in the really early days. He says the industry has had its iPod moment. You know, a great new tool that makes everything better. But the iPhone moment, that complete game changer that redefines the entire category, that's still out there on the horizon. And there's probably more than one of them coming.
And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway from Cursor's playbook. For a company on the bleeding edge of AI, the only way you survive is by building a team and a culture that is constantly, relentlessly creating that next disruption. Because in this market, the second you stop building the future, you're already history.